So we decided to drive out to Youngstown and do some riding there. Ben had made a route. Youngstown, Ohio it's less than an hour from here, the Akron area. So I spent a lot of time when I was growing up in Youngstown because one of my closest friends, was the drummer of my band back then. So in my 20s, we would drive out there for practices almost once a week, play shows out there, hang out, all that stuff. We started out in Mill Creek Park. Mill Creek Park is beautiful. It basically, there's bike paths and closed roads and bike lanes on both sides of Mill Creek, and there's varied terrain. You could see here we're way up above a gorge. It almost had, to me, a West vibe with all the conifers up that high, all the pines, whichever kind of trees they were. And it's dammed up in a number of spots, so there's swimming beaches. Here you can see there's like a kayaking, boat head, and all of that. Though I had been here before and we had done a little bit of hiking, I do remember there's an operational mill. I believe it's called Lanterns Mill. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. We stopped by. It's at the end of this video, actually, on the way back. And hiked around there a little bit, took a few photos way back in the day. I did not remember how extensive Mill Creek was, if I ever did know. When you're younger and you're going to places, you're just like popping to specific places, to a house for practice, to a bar for the show, somewhere for lunch or breakfast, whatever it may be. So yeah, I just really didn't. This might as well have been my first time in Youngstown, as ridiculous as that sounds, because I had no real map of what it was like, because it was just always someone driving me or us popping in those particular places. But yeah, it was really cool. It kind of the vibe with like the way you can ride, the trails, and then on the road and the shoulders, and even the open roads, cars seem very respectful knowing they were in a park. I'm not from Youngstown, so any cyclists out there, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but it sure felt like it. Was really cool. Reminds me of the Emerald Necklace a lot in Cleveland. I've done a video on doing a couple century rides where we kind of use the ring of parks around Cleveland, and the parkways kind of reminded me of that. But really, really cool that so many of the roads were closed and just for bike traffic.
Shit.
We rode almost the entire park except for the extreme southern tip, and then it looks like it leads into other parks, but just looking at the map, it doesn't look like there's as many bike trails or bike paths or even any at all once you get south of the edge of Mill Creek. But yeah, so we only missed a little bit of it with our planned loop where we started, went down the one side of the creek, river, and then into and made a loop through Youngstown and into downtown and all that, and then came back kind of down the other side of the creek. So yeah, really great riding. We ended up with 1,400 feet of elevation. The park itself you could see here, it's curving and it's undulating, so you get elevation here. Youngstown itself, in the Mahoning Valley, you could really plan a route with a lot of elevation if you wanted to. If you guys saw our Otis Roubaix ride we did in Akron, it's kind of similar. But, Youngstown is in the foothills of the Appalachians, and the Mahoning Valley is much deeper and broader than the Cuyahoga Valley is. So a lot of climbing to do, and then, Youngstown is kind of where the Mill Creek, or the original part of Youngstown, goes into the Mahoning River. So like a lot of the post-industrial Midwest Rust Belt towns, the juxtaposition between this beautiful, park and the nature around here and some of the nicer surrounding neighborhoods compared to other parts of town is pretty wild. Youngstown, as some of my friends who are from there would even say, is a mini version of Detroit. It's amazing to see something that had grown so amazingly and then declined so extremely and so rapidly, and then still a little bit of rebirth in the downtown. But yeah, Youngstown has lost 65% of its population, and once you get into some of the neighborhoods, you feel it. Like I said, if you've driven around Detroit besides the downtown and certain of the inner ring neighborhoods, and then even some of the farther flung ones where there's only a few houses left and it just feels eerie and weird, that is Youngstown. They definitely, like I said, the downtown has made a huge comeback. When I was first going there and playing in bands, I remember a girlfriend at the time wanted to walk down the street, and this is right on Federal, right on the main street in downtown, to get a pack of cigarettes. And I remember a number of the guys going, "You are not walking a few blocks on your own in Youngstown." And this was in the downtown. The downtown is definitely not like that anymore. There are bars and restaurants, and personally, I never feel unsafe there. But it's still, Youngstown's problems have, it's a steel town, and unlike some of the other big steel towns, Buffalo, Cleveland, Detroit, it's kind of landlocked because the Mahoning is not navigable, so they were at a disadvantage. Youngstown started to shrink and lose industry a little earlier than many of the other towns, probably more on Detroit's time frame, just because Detroit had built itself up as a car city before everybody else. Everybody did it after. But yeah, they had a competitive disadvantage earlier on. And then Youngstown has just been riddled with corruption, mob violence. So yeah, I mean, a city really run by the mob up until recent times, or I don't even know how corrupt or how much of the mob exists there still. But yeah, here you can see these are a lot of the more recent revitalization efforts. There's the Cavelli Center down there. There's an outdoor amphitheater in these parks. So they've made a lot of effort. The amount of houses they've torn down. I was just at a land bank conference actually for all of Ohio, and I just, the people from Trumbull and, Mahoning County and all that, I'm like, these are the people with the real challenge. But a lot of the neighborhoods they have, torn down. Youngstown doesn't even have in mind the idea of that they're going to hit some new growth spurt. Their whole city plan is for, the size that they are now with just the hopes for a little bit of growth. You could see through here, this is neighborhood area. This is formal residential area we're riding through. It makes for really interesting and cool riding. As you know, I love the gritty and industrial gravel type stuff. We definitely want to come back and check out even more. There looks like there's access roads along the tracks like we ride in Akron. There's just tons. We just scratched the surface making a 30-mile loop with a big chunk of it being in Mill Creek. But you could see here where all these lots would have had houses and commercial development on them back in the day, and now there's just one here or there. Coming from a city and living in a city with many of the same struggles, just not on quite as high of a level, I'm very curious as to why Youngstown became so corrupt and so mob-ridden. And an hour away, we didn't have as many of those issues in Akron. Youngstown also didn't diversify as much as some of the other surrounding Rust Belt cities, and that's another reason they really got hit harder when everything did flee. And I think it was 1977, the last big mill closed, which was just a huge blow. I think there was at some point 40,000 steel jobs in the city. So yeah, it's kind of wild because in the 50s they had actually predicted continual big growth, so they thought there was going to be even more post-World War II. Boom, and Youngstown actually annexed a bunch of land to the east that was for future residential development that clearly never happened, as the city just shrunk by a massive amount. I know over the years of making videos, a number of people have commented that said they were from Youngstown. I can't remember if we have any friends who are still out that way. Like so many people who say they were from Youngstown, they're not in Youngstown anymore, unfortunately. But I would love to chat with some people. I think it'd be really cool to plan like a full industrial gravel ride out here. I did look up a newer bike shop called the Psych Ward, and it looks like they do social rides and stuff like that, but I haven't reached out yet to see if they would be interested in doing something or if they already have this kind of thing covered. But it seems like it'd be really cool to do something with, challenging elevation and interesting cuts all through town. I definitely would want to do it with a local partner and not like, location appropriate Youngstown, whatever it be. But yeah. So since my band days, I'd only been back a couple times, as mentioned. I know visiting my buddy Eric, and I remember seeing like the beginnings of the revitalization of downtown. He was a bartender in a pretty nice little bar restaurant down there that was cool to go to. He then helped a friend build out an entirely new bar and restaurant that was right downtown. Both those places are gone, but there's other stuff in their locations now. So that was, definitely good to see. And then last time I had a gig somewhere for some doctor portraits on the outskirts of Youngstown, and I decided to then go in and get some lunch and a beer at one of my favorite old bars, which is the Royal Oaks. We rode by it in this video a little earlier. It's like this lone building standing on a corner by the freeway, and their slogan on their Facebook and everything is "It's in the hood, but it's all good." But a lot of good memories of that place. It's a like vintage PBR and JFK themed like vibe in there. The owner's name is John Kennedy, so that's a big part of it too. But yeah, spent a lot of time out there and did not realize how rough the neighborhood was back in the days when we were going there. But I guess sometimes ignorance is bliss, probably. So this was coming through campus, YSU, and getting into the edge of the downtown area. We went to this brewery called Noble Creature. Erin said it's been on her radar for a while. I looked it up. They specialize in sours and wild fermented beers. Really, really good. They had good food. The beers were great. We, it was the middle of a Sunday. We actually all wanted to try a little more, but we're like, we had to drive home and all that. But definitely a place we will be going back to. It's in this old church, really cool theme. Just one of the better breweries I've been to in a while. And yeah, definitely check it out if you're in the area. If you're planning a ride, make your stop and start there. There's another brewery we did want to check out. They're not open on Sundays. I believe it's Penguin City, and that's owned by a guy who was in a Youngstown band as well. That looks like a much bigger location, so maybe if there's ever a big meetup ride planned, that would be the spot to stop. I don't know. So we went into downtown, and then Aaron and Ben wanted to grab a coffee, a little caffeine to keep moving. I took that opportunity to ride down Federal Street and a couple of the main streets. I just wanted to see what they look like since I really haven't spent any considerable time there in so long. Looks like they're redoing a number of the roads again. I think they had just redone them in like '08. Well, that's how old I'm getting. '08 seems like it's not a long time ago anymore. So, and I know the day before the summit, our radio station, our public music radio station here in town, was part of a big band fest that was going on. So I think they always get a really good turnout for that. So like a lot of places, people moved out to the suburbs, but they still come back into the downtowns for events and for the bars and restaurants. So this is back in Mill Creek as we're circling around the other side. I mentioned it at the beginning, but if you're in the area, it's definitely worth going out here and planning at least a loop of Mill Creek, and checking it out. Just great riding, and like I said, undulating and curvy, not boring and flat, but not overly climbing too. So a great day out, and as I've been saying for a number of years, I really do want to get in my car a little more and go and ride in different places. I love just leaving the door on my bike, and I love never getting in my car, but I've exhausted a lot of routes and the places to ride around here, and stuff I could do on the weekdays. I'm really glad we got out in the car and went and did something on the weekend like this. So I had actually ridden over to Aaron's, did the ride, and then rode home. So that my day turned out to be 34 miles or something like that. Anyways, that'll do it for this one. As always, if you like this kind of content, give us a thumbs up. I will see you in the next one.